to that, I'm just saying, yeah, I'm or testifying that I continue, and that's why I had Ian on the show, continue to hear more and more people in my spheres of personal development, self-help, whatever, who are utilizing the Enneagram. And I think I want to say kind of broadening out on it, on helping us understand it from a deeper and broader aspect of like, hey,
more and better conversation around it is helping us all understand it at a deeper level, and the different facets of it, and how to be in health in it, and as opposed to in our less authentic, not healthy self.
Yeah.
We're having a better conversation, and it's more, and it's out there. And I'm in a very spiritually driven community, as you know, and so it is the standard.
So, brother, this morning, so it's Friday, so I always meet with my guys at the coffee shop. And I kind of ended up with, I said, okay, which of you guys have done the Enneagram? And two of the three that were there today said, yeah, I've done it. And one specifically, he's pretty into it. The other one, who had not done it though, he said, man, I haven't done it. He says, I don't want to, I don't want my wife to, because she is prone to be like, okay, see, that's what I am. And use it as justification.
Right.
And I thought, okay, that's the bad side probably of profiles in general, is taking them. I mean, on one hand, we're trying to understand ourselves, but it's not to limit ourselves, which really goes into what you were just saying off camera, which was that we have all these. So the Enneagram has 9 numbers, which 9 what? Profiles? I don't know how you'd refer to them.
I don't know. I was thinking about that last night when I was taking my notes. I don't know what Ian would say on that, but I just said personality profiles because that's what we're used to with the disc and all that.
And I've got the books right here. 9 types, I guess. Anyway,
personality types, I think. Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so 9. And what you were just saying, and you can go into that for a minute, is in essence, and he did say this. He says we have aspects of all these within us. So we're looking though at the propensities that we have, and I'm grappling with the propensities that we have maybe fallen into because of our upbringing and the things that we embraced, which brings then into the question, what you just were talking about is authenticity, that you were saying it in a positive light. And maybe you need to rephrase that here for us to hear and ponder, because I can also look at that and go, gosh, if I'm a little bit a part of these, but I've fallen into some of them, I don't know who the heck the authentic me is. I mean, I can get lost in that.
No, I get that. And I think the common perception is, well, first of all, you said if I've fallen into them or whatever, which that's a thing. And we do that for sure. I think there's another side of that then, that is the intentional aspect of it, of saying I intentionally tapped into that 5 in me rather than the 8 or the 2 or whatever. And in terms of personality style. And there's I obviously study a lot of indigenous teachings and so on. That's been a big part of my life. It's sort of a rudder on the ship. And the Toltec teachings, the ancient Toltec that came from the Inca, and they were sort of a sect of the Inca that were sort of like monks. They walked kind of a higher path, and they became called the Toltec, though it was just kind of a group of Incas. And they
sounds like what the Tesla truck should be called. Here's the Tesla car. The truck's the Toltec.
The Toltec.
It looks like it's like a badass name.
By the way, Toltec means artist. And the Toltec believe that we are all artists, and we're here to paint a beautiful picture with our life. And there's a belief that we're all a messenger, that we have a message. Even on my website, it says, what kind of messenger are you? What message are you bringing to the world? Anyway, I'm a big fan of Toltec. There is this philosophy of what's sort of categorized under the shapeshifter concept. On a more basic term, it's or terminology, I think it is our access to multiple personality types within us. Now, we talk about multiple personality disorder and things like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about personality styles within all of us. And as Ian talks about, and anybody else I've heard talk about the Enneagram, they're very clear about the fact that we have within us all of these different personality styles, yet we then will gravitate towards one that tends to be our more core personality. And maybe that's where we rest best. Maybe that's where our best self comes out, our most authentic self comes out. And like you were saying, a lot of people, I think, they want to look at a personality test, DISC or whatever, and say, okay, that's what I am, and this is definitive, done. And the Enneagram is much more fluid than that. And it's actually, we're far more capable than that. I don't think so. I think people think, oh, I'm more messed up, I have more personalities. I'm like, well, you're more capable because you have more personalities, in my opinion. And the intentional, or the understanding of that's a thing, that it exists, is one sort of perspective, and say, okay, that's I have access to all these personalities, instead of I am afflicted with all of these different ways and thoughts and things. People look at it as an affliction as opposed to a blessing. But you can look at that as a blessing and say, wait, I have access to all of that. Like,
can I ask,
need to tap into?
Can we rephrase it to, I have access to these different personalities, to these different personality abilities in essence. Like if
abilities. Yeah.
So I was a pro cyclist, and if that's the only sport I can do, no, put me on a bike, man, I'm great, but I cannot play basketball. I can't play baseball. I can't shoot pool, and I can't bowl, and I can't do discus, whatever. I am what I am. That's it. I'm just like, as opposed to,
Diddley.
To what?
Bo Diddley. He was famous for doing all the sports,
Yeah, I was going to say decathlete, the old decathlete, do 10 sports, that's, or even today, the triathlete that can do many, that they are an athlete, they are a person, but they have ability to tap into, different abilities, different perspectives, so that we can tap into those different personality styles. It's not to limit us, but yeah, as you said, we're going to gravitate. And I would say, or I want to say that, genetically, man, you've got kids, we've got kids that we see, and it's amazing that they come out into similar environment, and how they perceive life so differently. They grasp onto things so differently. And so I do feel like, maybe more so than ever, that there is a natural propensity, and yet I can't separate it from the things that we are maybe forced into from an upbringing, and dude, you were my brother. So, at some point early on, if I'm actually a 3, which you said you thought I was, which is the performer.
Yeah.
I saw that, and I saw, ooh, if I do X, Y, Z, I get applause from my dad, or from the people in racing, or the people at the personal development seminar that I'm at with my dad or whatever. They kind of like it when I act this way, and ooh, I like their attention and their accolades and approval. Yeah. So I embraced that. So we could say I embraced that. Did I fall into it? Man, I don't know, but I embraced it on my own. I didn't know any better, and it served me well in some ways. And then in an unhealthy way, it didn't, but I guess I'm going to assume that it did fit some natural predisposition.
Yes. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that, actually. And by the way, as a correction to myself, it was Bo Jackson, not Bo Diddley. I was
wondering, man, because Bo Diddley, I'm thinking that's music, isn't it?
I'm a musician, so I went to music, but it was Bo Jackson. And I just remember as a kid being so impressed with the fact that he's a footballer, or plays football. We say football player in the States, I guess. And then, and basketball player, or baseball player, and lots of other sports. Anyway, sorry.
You just made a lot of people more comfortable, because they're out there still, and they were going, what the hell is he talking about?
Googling Bo Diddley.
I thought he was in music.
Yeah. Right after I said it, I was like, no, it's Jackson. Anyway, so in terms of the stuff with the kids, that's a great point, actually, because I've talk a lot about environment, and how environment matters so much around us. It shapes us. And when I talk about environment, I'm not talking about ecologically. I mean, in terms of humans, like the humans around us is our environment, that our family, our friends, our workmates. There's a culture that we're in, right? You and I were just kind of laughing about the difference in the culture between San Diego and Colorado Springs, or Woodland Park divide, where you're at. And there are cultural differences. A lot of the reason I moved to San Diego is because of the culture that's here that I fit in with well. And I know that the environment and maybe slash culture is that's the nurture part of the nature versus nurture discussion. And obviously, I think we know now it's not nature versus nurture, it's nature and nurture. They both have a big effect. And we've experienced that a lot as we both have adopted children. And we've experienced their previous programming very alive today, despite the fact that, you know, in your case with Jadaria, she was 4, you know, when she came into your world. And Francois, my guy, was 10, you know, so he had 10 years of being a street kid in Rwanda programmed into his head.
That we're never going to erase.
That we're never going to erase. And, you know, to some degree, we shouldn't have tried. And
it was ignorant of me to, it was my ignorance.
Well, we've talked about this another, and we'll probably talk about it more, but it was ignorance. It was just ignorance.
Well, but I do stay right there. I do want to say the same thing with all of us. It's something that I continue to be gains more gravity with me that as all of, you know, I did this show recently with Vienna Farron in her book, The Origins of You. And we talked about it in there and under the aspect of, we think that we fly the coop at some point, leave home, and now we're us, man. Now it's time to be the authentic Jared, the real me. And you can't, you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to figure out to some degree who that is, because that programming that you had behind you, whether it was good or bad, or you adopted what you did or whatever, we are never going to get rid of that. That exists, man. That is a root. Now I think of it like the old CDs. You and I are old enough to remember that, you know, you burn some songs into those and to think, well, you can't get rid of those anymore. Now you can put more songs on there. And I'm going to continue my playlist, you know, to put new songs on there. And I may never, to some degree, I may never go back to some of those old songs, especially if I don't want to.
Right.
But they are there. And in a bad moment, I can fall back into that tune.
That's a good analogy, actually. Yeah. So we have, I think a lot of it comes around just our perceptions of what is, and we're trying, we think like, oh, it should be this way, as opposed to recognizing some of the true nature of who we are is the fact that we have, I said multiple personalities. That's not the way we want to frame it, but we have lots of personality styles within us, and traits, characteristics that we can tap into. The environment around us is going to always draw out of us something. Like if we are in a particular environment, you know, when you're with one group of people, they may pull something out of you. Yeah. And that is very different than another group of people. And they're like, well, I'm a totally different guy when I'm with those guys than I am with the other guys over here. And I think people look at that often as, oh, that's just me being, sort of pandering to the crowd and being inauthentic. And I think, well, no, it's just different sides of you that you lean into when you're with a particular group of people. And why wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? Actually, you're just adapting to the moment with the people. Now, if that's pulling something inauthentic out of you, I think you'll know that. And I think that, and you can have environments that also pull very negative things out of you, and you may choose to not be in that environment anymore.
Can we play with that? Because I feel like this is at the heart of that question a lot of people have around authenticity.
Yeah.
And being the authentic you, because if you're in a group and you're with a bunch of, I'm going to exaggerate the point. You're with a bunch of people who have, kids who have committed suicide. There may be some things that you would talk about in another frame of reference, another social group that you realize, ooh, that's probably not appropriate right here. Some suicide, or even just using the word suicidal in a flippant, say, ooh, that's probably bad form to use that in here. That's not being inauthentic. That's being respectful. I would think. Now to exaggerate it, if you're in a place and you've got a whole bunch of people who are talking about the advocacy of racism or something like that, and you're realizing, I don't actually agree with that, and I can't let that fly. And you may speak up against that.
Like that's not something I'm going to adapt to. I'm going to bail.
I'm going to bail, or I'm going to speak against that.
Or that's speak against it. Yeah.
So we're talking about a different respect. And so I think being aware of that and modifying towards those, or being aware, yeah, it's not being authentic. That's being aware. And when we find the person, we've all known somebody who, man, no matter where you are, Joe is always Joe, and he'll say whatever, he'll say what he's going to say amongst anybody. He's probably a butt, and a lot of people think of him that way, and he's not serving himself nor them very well by being, theoretically super authentic. No, he's being a butt.
No, a lot of people, I think, do that. Well, I'm just going to say whatever I want to say, and that's me being authentic. And I'm like, you're doing it wrong.
Agreed.
That's not how you do authenticity. That's just being a jerk. So there's a lot of layers there.
To your shapeshifter, I'm upholding that, saying, yeah, you can shapeshift unhealthily, but there's a healthy way to that within this. Again, I think this thing that few people, I think our culture is grasping with what authenticity is.
Absolutely. And I was just joking with Frank White. I was talking to this morning, the Overview Effect author, and about he and I tend to be very adaptive in certain situations, and we're doing some events together or whatever. And I like the fact that I can walk into a conservative Christian setting, and I can quote scripture, and like I can play the part and do the thing and have fun and enjoy that moment. And then I can go over, to a street gang in Compton, and I can hang with them and talk their lingo and do that. And I can go to the next place and talk with the business folks and the CEOs and the Fortune 500 guys. And then I can go talk to the other, and like I can adapt in each one of those moments. And I think, how wonderful is that? Like I just adapted in all those things. I was authentic in my approach in all of it. It was just a different style. It's not inauthentic. It's a different style.
Yeah. I want to,
a red Porsche and a black Porsche is not inauthentic. It's just two different colors.
Because what I heard with you saying is you have the ability, which is awesome, to relate to each of those places. You can go talk with the conservative Christian folks and then the gang in Compton, whatever, and you have the ability to relate, which means to me that you have the ability to connect. That's beautiful.
Right.
That's awesome. That doesn't mean that you're going to go over here and, like when you say quote scripture, you're not pandering. Let's use that word. You're not pandering to them. You're using it because you understand it, and you may grapple.
It's like if I'm in Mexico, I speak Spanish. I'm just speaking their language.
And that's not being authentic. That's being. Now you're not, again, either of those environments. You're not going to sit there and nod your head to something that you intrinsically disagree with or don't align with.
No.
Right.
No, especially me, as you know.
Well, I do. I know, but I appreciate that you're able to do it respectfully. But I think you're able to be the authentic you as you relate to and connect to others, which may bend some of these Enneagram, nines. As you were talking to me off camera about somebody you worked with, and you can talk about that if you want, that helps you understand your key type, that you're not just one type. Your key types, and that you may in this environment veer towards X. Like for me, I think that when I'm with my family, I can tend to be, and with friends, I can tend to be more of a 7, or actually even on my own by myself, I can tend, man, I'm just looking for the next pleasure. I'm looking for the next fun thing. And yet in my work and in athletics, I am a 3. And yet I also resonate a lot with the 5 in certain environments and whatnot. And that we're going to, and that's where I was interested, that in health and weakness, in stress, in peace, in a place where we do need to perform, step up, whether it's at school or work or athletics or whatever, that we may adopt a different persona than we are at home. Is that a yucky word though? Are people going to hear that bad? Persona, style.
I mean, maybe, but I think that what you're getting at is, it's a style. It's like a color option you could choose for the day, or the moment. Even the thing that I was telling you about earlier is it's called the harmony triad model. And I got that from Teresa McCloy. I know that Teresa and Ian are friends, I think too. And I know both of them through our father, through dad. But I went through Teresa's harmony triad sort of workshop thing or whatever, and it spits out a report on the other side, and it gives you 3 elements of your body, your heart, and your head, and the ways that we show up in those particular places with the personality styles. And I show up in my body as an 8, the challenger, so on, and then in my heart as the helper, the bringing love and all that. And then in my head, I am the investigator, and so the dad is 5, our father is 5, like cardinal 5, and I'm very much an 8, and the challenger, the justice seeker, that I can be prickly and abrasive and what did Ian say, and intimidating and so on. And I know that like a lot of my life has been trying to figure out this balance of, I'm an activist and I was a kickboxer and things like that. It's like being intimidating was reasonable in those arenas, but I don't like to bring that into my relationships with my family or my friends or anything like that. And I don't really want to be intimidating anyway, in any form. But it's a, I then swung the other way and became, it was Dan Tacchini in a workshop that I was in with him, and he was really working on me and asking me why I had caged my warrior, and why I wasn't being authentic in that way anymore. And I thought, man, I just feel like I'm intimidating all the time, so I was looking at this 8 aspect of that.
So like you polarized and went from the warrior to the pacifist, and
it was this full pendulum swing. And now, in my later years, I'm realizing that I can have a more of a balance and harmony and happy medium in there, if you will, than having to be so far on either end of the pendulum swing. But I've also just realized over the years that I really do see that ability to be a shapeshifter. Now I'm using the Toltec, terminology there, but that shapeshifter, which is more of an ethereal, personality shapeshifting than physical, obviously. But having that idea of being able to go from one kind of personality style to the next very fluidly and authentically in each one, and then come back to sort of my resting position of an 8 and a healthy 8, that feels masterful. Like that process of getting to that place and then being very comfortable in there. And there's another aspect of this that speaks to the need for confidence, to be very confident and in your, whatever it is that your main trait is or your main style is. And for me, again, it's an 8, to be very comfortable in that and embrace that 8, and also embrace the fact that I have 7 other personality styles I can tap into as well. Like a 7, I'm a very spiritually driven person, as you know. Everything is driven from my spiritual practices and beliefs and everything. Like a 7. I'm also very in my head a lot, like our father, and like a deep thinker and all that, like a 5. And I'm clearly a justice focused and motivated person, like an 8. And I'm a lover and, and peacemaker as well as a 2. And like, I could go on, but all those things are in me. And I love that I have that bag of stuff that I can reach into and say, I'm putting this jacket on today, or this super power suit, my Batman suit or whatever. I'm going to be a great 2 in this particular situation, or a great 5, because that's what this situation calls for, or that's what my daughter calls for. She needs this. My daughter needs my 2 today, and my son may need my 5 today, or whatever. I think, great, it's so wonderful I have all those in the toolbox, and that I feel comfortable and authentic in each of them.
What speaks to me in that, first off, is just awareness. And I do feel like that. And I ended up talking to my guys about that this morning, that the key initially is just, are you aware of yourself? And I hear as I hear you talk, that's of course why I asked you to do the show with me, is your
Ian said that. He said that the number one element of success that they found is self-awareness.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well, you just, and perfect. We just stumbled into it, into solidifying his opinion there. Yeah.
Well, okay. So on that, I want to point out, I mean, one of the beautiful, so I had Ian on the show, Ian Cron, and we talked about, the premise was the story of you. That's his new book, which I thought was profound. Now I got, since then, because he's having me on his show next, Typology. and he wanted me to get the book. So I did get it, his original book, The Road Back to You, which, by the way, I've mentioned to people, and oh my gosh, everybody has The Road Back to You. I looked on Amazon. He got 17,000 reviews on the thing, which if folks,
I haven't not read that one, and I will now put that directly in
oh
my
my,
queue.
yeah, well, just so folks know, in the nonfiction world, 17,000 views is rock star.
Yeah.
And so in that, so if I go to type 3, in each one, this is killer. It's each chapter for each number starts off with, these are what healthy 3s look like, or healthy, whatever your number. This is what healthy looks like. And to read that and go, huh, and then read, this is what average 3s do. And then the last one, this is what unhealthy 3s do. And I'm looking at it going, oh, oh, oh. And
running that whole spectrum, huh?
yeah. I mean, I could see myself in the healthy aspect. Ooh,
yeah.
The average, yep. The unhealthy, yeah. And then to go look at that and go, man, this is where I wanted to put that out and advocate that people, this is a dramatic awareness. Now, something else I wanted to pull out though to you, Jared, is when you talk about tools in the toolbox and shape shifting and these different personalities. I want to play with this for a second, because I thought of golf clubs. Okay. I don't play golf. I don't think you do either, but we know golf. So if anybody knows golf, I mean, you wouldn't go golfing and some dude has his golf bag there and he pulls out and all he has is one club. It's just the putter. Dude, he's a rock star on the putting green, but he can't drive the thing more than 20 yards and everybody else is going whatever they do, 300 yards. I don't know. With that. And we're and in talking about that, even amongst our Enneagram number, our primary one, but even more so if we're able to tap into others, we want to be able to do that. Now, does that mean, it doesn't mean you're everything. You do have a certain propensity. In this sense, we would say, you play golf. That's where you're most at home. You're not, but you need to have access, or you'd be well served to have those. And I'm being real cautious here because I don't want to be offensive and in this, but I wonder if you have somebody who's only can't come out of all they've got's a putter, that may even be, I wonder if that's even like could we say an autism type thing where, man, can't.
I think that we as a society, when we notice someone that is one singular way to a heightened degree or whatever, where it's very noticeable that person is very much this particular personality style. It's interesting because I think that if you're all over the place with different personalities, everybody's like, oh, that guy's a Fruit Loop, he's personality disorder and whatever. And then
they may be, if they're being that flighty, they may be so unaware of themselves that they're just kind of morphing and changing. There could be some reality to that. Okay.
And then there's the other side that's like, then they get called OCD or something.
Well, that's why I said, I'm so careful, or want to be, with being autistic, but
or spectrum, that's a conversation. That guy's on the spectrum. That's a thing to say now, I've noticed. But there's a but whatever, what we're just talking about is labels, none of which we're advocating for, but they are there socially. And those, because people I think people just expect, like, you should just be normal, right? And then normal is just kind of like this, you have one personality style and you do that, but don't go too far in that either, because that's too much for us. So there's all these, public kind of, or social kind of perceptions of our tendencies, which I also would call abilities. Like, we have the ability to have access to, or we have a blessing to have access to all of these things, and that each one of them can be authentically us. Like, this is my authentic 5. This is my authentic 2. This is my authentic 7 or 8. And that we shouldn't look at that and, have shame because of that, or feel that there's inauthenticity because of that. The other thing is that I think the more that we're able to do that and to be comfortable in those spaces and with that spectrum, is that it allows us to have our like kind of our resting face in our whatever the predominant personality type, like for me, an 8. So I feel like I can be a healthier 8 because of my acceptance, willingness, and embracing of all of the other personality styles within me. And I don't feel like I have to be all of them or just one. I feel like I rest in an 8 well, but I can show up in the other 7 whenever I need to. And that feels good. Like I feel confident in that.
Well, and I think that would be the telltale sign is how do you feel internally? Are you being true to yourself within that? And because a piece that Ian talked about, and it might have been in this book, The Road Back to You, is masks. And so let's go back to your analogy.
That is the Toltec discussion, by the way. They use the word mask, that we all wear a mask. And as a child, we grow up with a mask. Oh, you actually reminded me of this earlier, and I forgot to say something about children. So often parents have a little mask crafted out here in the ether that they are hoping little Junior comes into, to be a doctor. Daddy was a doctor, mommy was a lawyer, or whatever it was. So there's a mask there that's sort of hanging out in front of us. And we're sort of walking around as children, and we see these masks. We're like, I don't know, am I supposed to put my face in that? Like, is that my mask?
That's good, because if you have a parent that that or you subconsciously feel that they're putting your propensity is to, this goes back to Vienna Farron, your propensity is to attach and seek attachment over authenticity as a kid, as a human.
And that drives us into the mask sometimes that mommy or daddy wore or whatever. And it is not typically, it is not conscious on the parent side to be forcing or pushing that mask. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you're like, hey, I was an Air Force pilot and you're going to be one too, Billy.
Well, and I've done that. I've brought that up before. I've done that. I have in the past with self-employment, specifically to where my kids had one finally come to me and go, I know that you think it's the Holy Grail. And I think it was worth, they kind of presented it as, okay, I know self-employment's a Holy Grail, but I don't feel called to that right now. And I felt like a schmuck. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have our moments. Yeah.
Even as you referenced Toltec and masks though, because I was about to utilize the concept of mask as a negative.
They would normally look, I mean, the Toltec perspective is that the mask, I mean, to some degree, the mask is the inauthentic self showing up in a certain way. So you're wearing a mask, like I'm going to mask into a 5 today or whatever, because that's what it calls for, or 7 or 8.
Can I give a different, can I go back to your story of, and to use polarized, not that they are, but, polarized, you got the conservative Christian group over here at the conservative church. And then you've got your gang in Compton that you have the ability to relate there, but you show up, you're still Jared. You're still bald. You still have earrings, a beard, tattoos. You're probably in black. When you go into the conservative, just to not create a stumbling block, you may cut down on the piercings a little bit. Like, I'm not going to wear all 20 of them, or the big necklace. And when you go over to the Compton crew, you may put on some stuff because that's going to help them relate to you. They're going to be more comfortable.
There's a wardrobe that that is appealing to a personality or a certain group. Yes, for sure.
But let's go to the opposite side. Yeah, you're not gonna go to the one place, and not that you could do this, but if you could theoretically remove the beard, remove all the stuff, put paint over your body, makeup over your tattoos, and show up at the church in a suit to where I wouldn't even recognize my brother.
And that's a very good delineation. Yes,
you're not going to show up at the Compton crew slinging a gun. And
exactly,
inauthentic to you. So, okay, that's where I was
trying. You're adapting. This is great. Actually, that's a great part to point out. You're adapting to what is within your personality spectrum within each of those categories. So, in a 5, I have a spectrum within a 5 that I can show up in a healthy way. I could be then very inauthentic and show up in an unhealthy way. As a 5 as well, which is kind of what you were talking about, painting myself and whatever, and taking out all the piercings, whatever, like that kind of thing would be inauthentic for me. But adapting to my language a bit in the conservative situation versus something else, adapting my language that's within my authenticity range, that works. It's just like an authenticity range within each personality. Man, I wish we had Ian here to kind of check me on that, but otherwise, I think that seems like a reasonable perspective around it.
Well, I like the word you're using, language. I'm thinking about that right now because you're going
Yeah.
to talk. If you're over here with a Christian group, you do know scripture and you do know Christianese, and you can speak eloquently with them in a way that they can understand and resonate with, even as you are upholding the same principles and values that you have. But you're able to talk about that and discuss those, no
Right.
different than if you're in Mexico and you're speaking Spanish, or if you're over in Africa and you're speaking what you spoke there. What was it?
Swahili.
Swahili. You're going to do that we're able to relate, still being the authentic you at the core. And there are going to be sometimes some places where it goes too far out of your comfort zone. You actually don't speak Czechoslovakian. If that's all they speak, you're out. You just don't have the ability to. Or over here, you're not going to morph yourself to fit in with the Ku Klux Klan and relate to them, because you're just not. So yeah. So I hope we're painting a picture, or we're discussing and grappling with a picture of what this is on the authentic side, and the shapeshifting and the mask and the whatever that we're looking for. Again, at the core, though, we're still back to this starts off day one. Nobody can implement this without your own awareness, which is why we brought Ian on the show. And I would say, for everybody, go get the Enneagram, which, and I can't even pull his website out. Typology maybe is his website, but his books, The Story of You, The Road Back to You. You can get the Enneagram and take it in a lot of different places. But to get that, but then to have some understanding of, I especially am drawn, Jared, towards this is my predisposition, propensity, whatever you want to call it, what I gravitate towards. But here's what it looks like in health. Here's what it looks like I like his average or whatever. And here's what it looks like in unhealth. And then also being able to, and if you get either of his books, really, you can go just look at every profile and just start reading through it. Hey, here's a one. Ones are this, blah, blah, blah. And so I just start reading the one. I'm right away like, no, I don't really line up with hardly anything there. Let's just go to the next chapter, even without taking the test, and just to look at it. And I think I don't know if I can say that. I'm assuming that anyone is probably going to relate to a couple at least.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can read through, 4 or 5 of them and be like, yep, that's me. All of those. How'd that happen? And I was confused in the beginning, but, I've learned a lot about it over the years. And I was actually studying Enneagram with Teresa McCloy. I was talking about that did this, the Harmony Triad or whatever. And that at the same time that I was really deep into some of the Toltec teachings, I was reading like 5 or 6 Toltec books at the time. I've read them probably 5 times since then. But I was just recognizing at the same time learning about this shapeshifter philosophy and whatever, and listening to the Enneagram discussion, I was like, oh, wow, it's really a very much a similar discussion. I was thinking about it when you were saying a minute ago, like, yeah, I don't feel inauthentic because I speak Swahili and Spanish.
Yeah.
When I'm speaking those languages in other places, I don't feel inauthentic. It's just another facet of who I am. And it's something that
you said, they use the word like confident and almost proud of yourself that you can do that.
Yeah, I am. It's like I took the time to do that, to be able to adapt to that person, that specific culture, in a Spanish speaking culture or Swahili speaking culture, or whatever, because it matters to me. And also it opens up all new, I mean, in the particular language scenario, it opens up new windows into communication beyond the language, that is just understanding a culture and the way that they speak. Was like in Rwanda, when I learned Kinyarwanda, not Swahili, but Kinyarwanda, I understood my son, Francois, at a level that I never would have understood if I didn't understand his language. It's a village, specific language, and it's only spoken in Rwanda. And I'm like, oh my God, I understand you now. But, I can say that even somewhat about operating, more in the 5 space, even as a healthy 5 or whatever. Like, oh, I understand dad more because dad is a 5, and I understand, those things.
That feels like being a Jedi, man. If you went through, what a skill would be if you were like Ian and you're a rock star in the Enneagram, and you can meet somebody and within moments go, oh, this looks like a consummate 2. I can advocate for that. I can kind of graft towards that and understand that anything that we say or talk about, they're going to hear more in this filter in my authenticity as myself. I can have understanding and I can speak to that language a little bit better.
I'm in an environment here in my community, and I live in community with multiple families living on the same property and things like that. And I'm just used to, like, someone new comes into the group or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, whatever, so and so is bringing a friend over tonight, he's a 4. So
Really?
like we just talk like that, so it's like, oh, okay, I know what's coming in the door. um
That's
and we sort of, we razz each other for sure, but we support each other in our authentic kind of style as well, and also make plenty of room for our adaptability and shape shifting, in that realm as
It is
well.
funny. It's kind of like I've heard this recently. You mentioned the spectrum. And I think it was my wife or somebody, one of the kids came up with that term of, hey, daddy, your spectrum showing. And
Yeah.
to do it with that, with your, I mean, how great though, to have a connection to where you could do that and go, hey buddy, your unhealthy 3 is showing up there a little bit and you're performing. I did want to, and I'll put this in the show notes. You've mentioned, who is the lady you just mentioned?
Teresa McCloy.
Teresa McCloy. Her website is enneagramacademy.com. So you've worked with Teresa McCloy. So just as far as giving,
She's done a lot of systems and processes around the Enneagram that have really helped people understand it at a deeper level. And as I was telling you last night on our voice messages or whatever, like, she had me in tears in like the first 10 minutes, like
okay,
nailing me on stuff. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember saying to her, thank you for seeing me. Like, you really see who I am and what I'm about, which ultimately helped me understand myself and see my authentic self in a new way that I was not able to see before.
there's a great point of this, that we're looking at this as a tool. It's not the end all best tool on planet Earth, but the Enneagram as a tool to help us better see ourselves, understand ourselves, be aware of ourselves, and therefore be able to connect and relate to others better. So Teresa McCloy, enneagramacademy.com. Now, I had mentioned also Beth McCord. I had her on the show years and years ago. She's another one, well-known. I think our dad is a fan of her, and she has your Enneagram Coach.com. Beth McCord, your Enneagram Coach.com. I think she is best known in Christian circles, actually. And then Ian Morgan Cron, who I just had on the show, his primary place for the Enneagram is typologyinstitute.com. And his podcast, which is a pretty big podcast, which I found out because I'm going to be on there, so I'm honored, is called Typology. That's his podcast. So here's some, these are sources. And I do think the Enneagram, I do hear it being talked about more than anything else right now. When you come into personality profiles, I mean, again, our dad's big on DISC, Dan Miller at 48days.com, and they do a lot of DISC. I think the DISC is great and has great application as well. He's also a fan of the Enneagram. Everybody knows Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, dad's really into the Enneagram a lot more these days. We've had some big discussions, and obviously it's Ian and Teresa. I met through him because he's been so enamored with the Enneagram.
Okay. Well, to that, I'm just saying, yeah, I'm testifying that I continue, and that's why I had Ian on the show, continue to hear more and more people in my spheres of personal development, self-help, whatever, who are utilizing the Enneagram. And I think I want to say kind of broadening out on it, on helping us understand it from a deeper and broader aspect of, like, hey,
more and better conversation around it is helping us all understand it at a deeper level, and the different facets of it, and how to be in health in it, and as opposed to in our less authentic, not healthy self.
Yeah.
We're having a better conversation, and it's more, and it's out there. And I'm in a very spiritually driven community, as you know. And so it is the standard. Like, like most of the people in my community, I would think maybe they know DISC and they've done that, or Myers-Briggs or something like that. I mean, I've done them all. Obviously, we grew up in a family where we did them all, but all of them know about the Enneagram. That's just kind of the standard there, because it seems to be, I don't know. For me, it seems to be a very, it's not just like, what is my personality in a particular business situation, or I've done DISC tests often to be better in my business world. And it has helped with that. DISC has been great for that. But when I really wanted to understand my relationship stuff more, and sort of the spiritual aspects of who I am and my personality, I went to the Enneagram.
I want to.
I also learned about it through Richard Rohr. He's another great.
Oh, you're right. Well, Ian talks about him a lot. He references.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a good point, because and I don't want to make an unfair analogy or description, but I have found value for myself in the disc profile, especially vocationally, in saying, hey, these are my strengths. This is where I want to put my focus in my work so I can have mastery. And I don't want to spend my time over here trying to be X, Y, Z. Even from a vocational standpoint, I'm going to waste mine and everybody's time trying to do my own bookkeeping. Let me give that to somebody else who's a different, skill set, personality style and whatnot. And in that, man, I would be remiss to not bring up one of my favorites, if we're talking vocational understanding of yourself, is Jonathan Field's Spark Type. You can go to Spark Type, SparkeType.com, sparktype.com. It's a free test, free profile, whatever. And it says what sparks you primarily in your work. And that's where you should give focus. I love his test there. And then also Patrick Lencioni, who we had on the show recently, with workinggenius.com. I think it's $25. I'm a huge fan of it. I've referred so many people, very similar thing. This is your working genius. This is where you need to work. And I found a lot of help with the disc profile in there too. You can do the disc profile and do that with people that you're in community with or work with or married to or whatever, and get understanding of them. But it feels like over here on the relational side and understanding yourself, that the Enneagram seems to be shining really brightly on. And I want to ask you about something, because what I'm looking at too is it's helping me look and say, man, these are my propensities and my strengths and weaknesses. Something happens. This is going to be my tendency, to the word that you use, Jared, perceive. This is how I'm going to tend to perceive that. It's not reality. It's not fact, not right or wrong, but this is just my propensity. This is the filter that I see the world through. I tend to see the world through the filter of a 3. And I want to be aware of that and realize, man, when X happens, this is what I tend to, and then even more so, not more so, but to add to that, then the people who I am close to, intimate in my life, when X happens, they're going to tend to see it this way. And knowing that, man, talk about relational glue, is powerful. And yet I say that, and it's dramatically hard for me to do that well, to be that. It's hard enough to understand ourselves, much less somebody else. But this is what we're talking about, is the platform, the foundation, the getting started. That's yeah.
I mean, we're coming back. We continue to kind of circle around the continual fact that self-awareness is at the core of all this, and to have that self-awareness and to be able to explore it. And to explore it with curiosity and and excitement, as opposed to exploring it with like, what's wrong with me? That's also a thing, I think, in terms of how we go into that exploration. I go in with wide eyes and expecting to be wowed and to find some new aspect of myself. And I'm excited about that. Even if it is a negative one, I'm like, well, cool. Now I'm aware of it. And there's little isms all the time that I have that I don't want to tap into. You pointed out one not too long ago about me tending to kind of laugh or sort of chuckle a little bit when I'm saying something that's a bit weighty, and that laugh sort of takes away from the impact of the thing that I might be saying. You were distracted. It's
so funny you bring that up, brother, because I was going to tell you after the show, you don't do that on the show.
I'm very tuned into it now because my brothers.
You still do it a lot with me when we're talking. Just that you still do a lot. Okay, we're talking about this thing and people don't have context. So I just pointed out, it's kind of one of those things. We all have our personal things that we do. Even
isms is what I say. But
isms, or even the propensity to or like. If anybody has kids these days, actually the whole culture is like is every other word. So like
I did it with Saoirse, my 10-year-old, the other day, and I said, let's see how far you can go without saying like. And she was laughing. She couldn't talk. She was laughing so hard she almost cried.
I've done it with my kid. And I remember Dad doing it with us with, I think it was, So, I was with, this
Oh,
guy.
I did that so much. I think it was dad that kind of got that out of me.
Okay. So so if we're going to be, you brought it up, so it's your fault. So if we're going to be candid, so I called you out a little bit on and it's when you're giving your opinion. And I think, well, you tell me, but I'm going to think, is
I
it,
know already what I'm going to say. Go ahead.
okay. Cause I was going to say, is it an insecurity or something? And you will chuckle. And I felt like, you're taken away from the gravity of what you're saying. But when you're here on a show where the point is for you to give your opinion, whatever, you don't tend to do it. And I was noticing that now. So
I know exactly why. And it's great that you're pointing it out. Good case study here. For instance, like right just now, ordinarily in conversation, I would have said, but because I'm on a podcast, I know not to do that. I've just been programmed for so long not to do that. Now,
and it's funny because I was listening to you because you did, early on in the show, you said once, and I thought, oh, now I'm going to listen and see if he does it. And then you didn't forever. So you caught
up. I probably got the one out of my system. And then moved on.
I think we all do it to some degree, but yeah.
Sure. This thing with with why I show up or why I'm taking that moment when I'm saying something serious or weighty, or sometimes it's a piece of advice like that. It's something anecdotal or something that I'm offering. And in normal conversation, when I'm not on the mic to give advice or whatever, when I'm just in conversation with friends or with my brother, I will sort of laugh into it and sort of say it sort of playfully because of what I was talking about earlier, because I'm trying to soften myself so that I'm not showing up as being abrasive or being an authoritarian or opinionated, whatever. And so I'm trying to soften it a bit with a laugh subconsciously. I never thought that would be a good plan and planned it out and did it. It just has happened subconsciously. And you called it out. And I thought about it. I thought, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing that I always do. I'm trying to soften myself in that moment. Not well. I'm not saying it's a good tactic. But that is subconsciously, and it is very subconscious, what I'm trying to do there. It's like, I don't want, Kevin to think I'm just trying to tell him what to do or whatever. And in reality, what I should say is just say what I think. And you know me well enough to know that I'm saying it out of love. I don't have to laugh.
I know you, and I know you, I hear your tone or whatever. And I felt like you're taking away from the gravity of and I thought about it when you're giving your, I was gonna say opinion, but guidance even is when you tend to.
It's guidance typically and that's when I do it. Yeah, I've noticed since you told me that's when I do it most.
Okay.
And I'm grateful. I've told like three of other friends how grateful I am that you called me out. It wasn't a big thing, but it's like a thing that I tune into. And I also know that as I tune into that, I've become aware of other things I was unaware of, other little isms like that. And I think, what else do I do like that? What else is creeping into my conversation that isn't necessarily my authentic self that I'd like to kind of weed out? And in doing so, I also have to know what my authentic self is in order to be able to weed it out, right? It's like you need to know what is the wheat and the chaff, in order to be able to weed it out.
Man, and it's in the reality is it's so powerful because those little things can erode our impact. One of my isms is I start talking really fast. Especially I can get
that runs in the family, I think.
Yeah.
I slow myself down constantly.
Because when you that's what I started listening to people, and the people who talk and they're intentional.
And they draw, and you're like leaning in, like, what is he going to say?
It's like this must be Mr. or Mrs. Wisdom. And what I've realized, and so I've had people sometimes say that to me when I'm present and thinking about myself, and I'm sitting here and it feels kind of funny because really the reason that I'm talking this way is because I'm not quite sure what I'm saying, but I don't want to put in the fillers of or like, so I'm putting pauses, and I sound very wise when I'm actually feeling a little unwise, but it matters out here in the populace and how we come across. And
I'd rather you slow down and then fill it with ums and whatever as well. Yeah.
Awareness of the isms. That's a great book title. Maybe that should be your next book. I did want to I did want to highlight though that, or get your perspective on that, the concept of a filter. That's what I keep thinking about with myself. Like I am in reading Ian's book, and now especially this, The Road Back to You, and looking at the three, and I'm going to go back to that. This is a healthy three, or whatever. How does he say that? Healthy or unhealthy, healthy, average, and unhealthy, something like that.
Right.
And looking at, man, that's my filters. That's my filters. I wake up today, my general filter is a 3, but I'm also, depending on my health, awareness, being present, fear, anxiety, whatever, I'm going to veer into that spectrum of the 3. And my filter is going to change, and I'm going to take it in an unhealthy way and react this way. Can I center myself, come back to being present, being aware, and say that, no, I am going to enact as the healthy. So can I be aware and have that filter? Almost, I say filter, maybe, sunglasses or glasses. I want these glasses on today. I don't want the Kevin anxiety, fearful, egotistical, narcissistic, whatever. I want to be the healthy me, but to be aware again, this is the filter that I tend to see of, and not everybody sees that. I think that's one of the big things as well. It has been for me to, instead of being frustrated with the world, go, no, man, not everybody is me. And thank God. Thank God I'm me. Thank God not everybody else is.
Right.
I want to be the healthy me, but these are our propensities, predispositions that we are going to gravitate towards. And how do we do that authentically, at peace? And I think about that a lot, man. And I've seen your journey, and I hear you talk to that, to when we are feeling, when I am feeling anxiety, it's a telltale sign that I am not acting authentically and I'm being unaware of myself. That's when and I can even look at my wearable devices and tell me that must have been an inauthentic day. Yeah. My stress count is way up, and I can look at that. And sometimes it's not what I'm not even aware of it. Yeah.
Well, we've touched on a lot of things here, but I think one of the things that Ian was pointing out specifically too is that we're not static beings. We're not created to be such. I think a lot of people get caught up in feeling the need to be statically one particular personality style. In this case, we don't see ourselves as fluid beings. And I think the more that we do see ourselves as these fluid beings, and with the ability to tap into multiple different styles, not personality disorder, but styles of personality. We have all those crayons in the box. Why not use them? We have those clubs in a golf bag or whatever. Why not use them? Nobody looks at the golfer and says, "Hey, what idiot? What'd you bring all those clubs for?" Like, well, I brought them to win, man. It's a good decision. It's helpful to have all those clubs in the bag, because you don't know what you're going to come up against. And because I'm using a driver instead of a putter doesn't mean I'm inauthentic. I'm being strategic.
Yeah.
So just a different way of looking at it. And I think that comes through self-awareness. It also comes through a lot of self-love. I have to say that there was a time in my life when I wouldn't have even been receptive enough to any of this because of the lack of self-love in my life. I would have just berated myself. I think, for having these different tendencies and like, just, pick a lane, Jared, come on. And I felt like I needed to. And I think a lot of society culturally pushes us in that direction. Sometimes parents, ours did not, by the way, but sometimes parents push us in a particular direction for a career or a particular way of being. Maybe the entrepreneur thing we had pushed on us a bit, but that also fit us pretty well.
Well, and that's, gosh, I do want to say, I mean, I struggle with that today. If my kid says, Daddy, I rocked it on this essay or the story I wrote or whatever. I'm like, oh man, that is awesome. If I'm just not, being unaware, I'm going to, that is awesome. And then the other one, Daddy, I got a, perfect grade on my algebra. Oh, cool. I don't give a crap about math.
That also runs in our genes.
I know. And it does in my family. And yet, did I do something wrong? I mean, but it's daunting because, the average kid's going to gravitate towards, I'm going to apparently I get more, I felt that internally. There's more accolades with writing in English, and
yeah.
And again, so that's what we've all grown up with and experienced with. And now is our time, as we're all sitting here, to become aware of who we are, what that was, what we embraced, the made up stories and the things that we gravitate toward, and who are we really, which I think is a lifelong journey. And I would ask your thoughts on, it'd be great to ask Ian too, that I assume that to some degree there's going to be a natural propensity, but through our own evolution and health and awareness that things are going to change some over time and times of life, and who you are as
For sure, yeah.
as a parent with little kids, and who you grow to be as an empty nester without those demands and whatever. Who knows how that can change and morph and help you, and you find yourself, man, I'm really spending a lot of time and having fun in doing this, and it really lines up more with a different number on the Enneagram. How interesting is that? That's kind of awakening in me, not inauthentic, but it is a different timeline. I have different energies to invest. Maybe I'm just playing with it now, but I'm just and opening that up so that we are not confined. Feels important.
It does. I mean, I'm thinking through it as you're talking and thinking more about the, paints on a palette, as these different personality styles, and thinking, well, it's not bad if I use red or yellow or green. They're not bad colors. They're just, colors. And I grab, a certain amount of 7 different personality styles there. And then I have one that there's more of that color in my painting, but they all create a beautiful painting. And how much more beautiful could it be with all the different colors included in it, even if one is predominant, this 7 or 8 in my situation. So I think it is, we're kind of resolving back to understanding, again, this is a self-awareness thing, but when you are aware, then you can kind of dance in that realm of all of these different personality styles. And that perspective of looking at it as sort of a closet with different, superhero outfits in it, if we're looking at the healthy side of all of those different personality styles, and we get to have access to those, and I think that's wonderful and encouraging and exciting, and it speaks to the multifaceted abilities of our humanity. And I love that, as opposed to what I felt for a long time of like, I am confused, who the heck am I, what is going on? Maybe I have personality disorder. Certainly had a few people throw their hat in the ring on that discussion in terms of pointing to that with me. And I just changed my perspective around it through other self-awareness, practices and so on, and engaging with Teresa and the Enneagram discussion and all that, and realizing that these are not maladies of the human. These are superpowers of the human. And that's a very different approach. And then I feel like that perspective has allowed me to be in the health of my 8-ness more than I was able to before, because I was fighting the current kind of in other directions.
Well, and one thing I don't want to miss before we wrap up here, you reminded me of moments ago, was in understanding this. So as I especially look at the 3, and I look at how Ian defines it in The Road Back to You, or starts off the chapter on each category or each number with the health, the average, the unhealth, is looking at that and giving myself grace. That's something that stood out too, and saying that this is who I am. And yeah, when I am in anxiety or fear or in a difficult place, that this is a part of me. I am going to gravitate towards these feelings and propensities, and everybody else does too. That we all have these places that are difficult, and to understand that, have grace for others is the easy one to jump to. But then to go, well, no, wait. What about me? Can I have grace for me that in this, I'm feeling this way, and my tendency is to medicate with chocolate or, whatever. That's have grace for that. It doesn't mean I give in or whatever, but just have some understanding and grace for self and having some admissions of going, yeah, man, I'm a 3 and this is where I tend to fall. What a great discussion to have with the people important in your life.
Well, that self-awareness in the absence of self-love or grace can be really painful. It's one that can be really destructive. I think it's like, okay, I'm aware of all these things, and man, I'm just not worth anything, and I'm struggling over here, and I've got personality disorder and all these other, negative aspects. But to be able to be self-aware and cover that situation with self-love, I think that allows us to see all the possibilities that we couldn't have seen otherwise. That self deprecation or loathing or whatever that creeps in, and I certainly have dealt with that clouds all of the possibility that lies within our personality and personalities, if you will. So
reminds me of Tom Ziegler. What a great way to anchor us then, of his aspect of with ourselves having the highest standards, seeking the highest standards. And because I got that one, and having the deepest grace for ourselves and for others. And I miss that one. I have historically. So there's where I'm affirmative action for self, highest standards, deepest grace. Man, brother, what a gift. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear Ian's take on this. Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up show, but it has been. All right, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.